The shovel struck earth with a hollow thud that echoed across the windswept cemetery, and Samuel Quinn pulled his horse to a stop at the weathered fence, watching the lone figure work in the fading afternoon light of 1878. A woman knelt beside three freshly turned graves on the hillside outside Galesburg, Illinois, her black dress dusty and torn at the hem, her dark hair falling loose from its pins as she placed wildflowers on each mound with trembling hands. Something about the sight pulled at his chest, the way grief seemed to wrap around her like a shroud, and before he could think better of it, Samuel dismounted and approached the gate, his boots crunching on the dry grass. "Madam," he called softly, not wanting to startle her. "Looks like you could use some help." She turned, and Samuel found himself looking into the most haunted eyes he had ever seen. They were green, the color of new grass after rain, but filled with a sorrow so deep it seemed to have no bottom. Her face was smudged with dirt, her hands raw and bleeding from digging without gloves, and she held herself with the kind of exhaustion that came not just from physical labor, but from bearing a weight too heavy for one person to carry. "I do not need help," she said, her voice hoarse and accent thick with traces of Eastern Europe. "I finish soon." Samuel looked at the graves, then at the pile of stones she had been trying to move to create borders around each plot. The rocks were large, far too heavy for someone her size to lift alone, and he could see she had been struggling for hours, maybe days, to complete this task. The sun would set in less than an hour, and the October wind was picking up, bringing with it the promise of a cold night. "I am sure you can finish," he said, opening the gate and stepping into the cemetery. "But there is no shame in accepting help to honor the dead properly. Let me assist you, and we will make sure these graves are fitting memorials." She studied him for a long moment, her gaze taking in his worn leather vest, the dusty chaps, the Stetson hat he held respectfully in his hands. Samuel was 32 years old, a cattle driver who had been on the trail for most of his adult life, and he knew he looked rough around the edges. But something in his face must have convinced her of his sincerity because she nodded slowly and turned back to the graves. "They are my family," she said quietly. "My mother, my father, my brother. The fever took them last week. I am Zara Volkov." Samuel moved to stand beside her, looking down at the three graves. "Samuel Quinn," he introduced himself. "I am sorry for your loss. No one should have to bury their whole family alone." Zara said nothing, but he saw her throat work as she swallowed hard. He set his hat on the fence post and rolled up his sleeves, then began lifting the stones she had been struggling with, placing them carefully around the first grave to create a neat border. She watched him work for a moment, then picked up her shovel and began smoothing the earth on the second grave, shaping it into a proper mound. They worked in silence as the sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Samuel could feel her watching him occasionally, as if trying to understand why a stranger would stop to help her. He was not entirely sure himself. He had been heading to town for supplies, planning to meet up with the cattle drive in a few days, but something about her solitary grief had called to him in a way he could not explain. "Where are you from?" he asked as he finished the border on the second grave and moved to the third. "Russia," Zara replied. "We come to America 5 years ago. We have small farm 3 miles from town. My father, he think America is land of opportunity." Her voice broke slightly. He was right, but opportunity does not protect from sickness. Samuel paused in his work, looking at her. She was young, maybe 24 or 25, and now she was completely alone in a foreign country. "Do you have other family? Anyone who can help you?" She shook her head. "No, only us. My father's brother, he was supposed to come from Russia, but we never hear from him. Maybe he is dead too. Maybe he changed his mind." She placed the last of the wildflowers on her brother's grave. It does not matter now. By the time they finished, the sun had set and stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. The 3 graves looked proper now, bordered with stones and marked with wooden crosses Samuel had helped her carve with their names. He stood back, hat in hand, and watched as Zara knelt before them one last time. "Goodbye, Mama," she whispered in Russian, then English. "Goodbye, Papa." "Goodbye, Dmitri." Her voice cracked on her brother's name. "I will make you proud. I will survive. I promise." Samuel felt something tighten in his chest. He had lost his own parents years ago, his mother to childbirth and his father to a riding accident, but he had been 20 and already working as a ranch hand. He had never known the particular loneliness of being truly alone in the world. Watching Zara say goodbye to her entire family, he felt an overwhelming urge to do something, anything, to help her. "Zara," he said gently, "it is getting dark and cold. When did you last eat?" She looked up at him, confusion crossing her face as if the question made no sense. I do not remember. Yesterday, maybe." "Come to town with me," Samuel said. "Let me buy you a meal. We can talk about what you are going to do now." "I cannot pay you back," Zara said, standing slowly. Her legs seemed unsteady beneath her. "I am not asking for payment," Samuel replied. "I am offering help to someone who needs it. That is all." For a moment he thought she would refuse, pride warring with exhaustion in her expression. But then her shoulders sagged slightly and she nodded. "Thank you," she said softly. "You are kind stranger, Samuel Quinn." He helped her onto his horse, then swung up behind her, acutely aware of how she felt in his arms, fragile and exhausted. They rode toward Galesburg as night fell completely, the lights of the town appearing like fireflies in the distance. Zara said nothing during the ride, but he felt her relax slightly against him, her body giving in to the exhaustion she had been fighting. The restaurant was warm and bright, a small establishment run by a widow named Mrs. Patterson who served simple but hearty food. Samuel guided Zara to a corner table, away from the curious stares of other diners, and ordered stew and bread for both of them. "Eat slowly," he advised when the food arrived, and Zara immediately began shoveling it into her mouth. "You will make yourself sick if you eat too fast after not eating for so long." She forced herself to slow down, and color gradually returned to her pale cheeks. Samuel ate his own meal, giving her time to recover before pressing her with questions. When she finally sat back, the bowl empty, she looked more human and less like a ghost. "What will you do now?" Samuel asked gently. "Do you have any money? Can you manage the farm alone?" Zara's expression grew troubled. "The farm," she said slowly, "it is not ours. We rent from Mr. Whitley. He comes yesterday, says I have 1 week to pay rent or leave. I have no money. Papa used everything we have to pay for medicine that did not work." She looked down at her hands. "I do not know what I do. I have nowhere to go." Samuel felt anger rise in him at the thought of a landlord pressuring a grieving woman, but he pushed it down. "What about your belongings? Do you have anything you can sell? Some tools, some furniture. Not much. Maybe enough for food for a few weeks, but not rent." She met his eyes. "You do not have to worry about me. You already do more than anyone else. I will find way." But Samuel could not shake the image of her kneeling alone by those graves, working her hands bloody to honor her dead. Something about Zara Volkov had gotten under his skin, and he found himself unable to simply walk away and leave her to whatever fate awaited. "I have a proposition," he said slowly, the idea forming even as he spoke. "I own a small ranch about 20 miles north of here. It is nothing fancy, just a few hundred acres and a cabin, but it is mine free and clear. I have been working cattle drives to save money to expand, but the place sits empty most of the year." He paused, choosing his words carefully. You need a place to live and a way to support yourself. I need someone to look after the property when I am on the trail. What if you came to work for me? Zara stared at him, suspicion and hope warring in her eyes. Why would you do this? You do not know me. No, I do not, Samuel admitted, but I know what it is like to be alone in the world. And I know that you worked yourself to bleeding to honor your family's graves. That tells me something about your character. He leaned forward. This would be a business arrangement. You would have your own room, and I would pay you a fair wage for maintaining the property, tending the garden, looking after the livestock. When I am home, you would cook and clean, but otherwise you would have your independence. It would give you time to figure out what you want to do with your life. And when you are home, Zara asked carefully, what would you expect from me? Samuel understood the fear behind the question, and he held her gaze steadily. Only what I said: cooking, cleaning, help with the ranch work. Nothing else. You would have your privacy and I would have mine. I give you my word as a gentleman. Zara was quiet for a long time, studying his face as if trying to read the truth in it. Finally, she spoke. I do not have many choices. But I tell you now, if you lie to me, if you try to hurt me, I will fight. My brother, he teach me to use rifle. I am good shot. I would expect nothing less, Samuel said, a small smile crossing his face. Is that a yes? It is a yes, Zara said. But I need few days to settle things at farm, to sell what I can. I will help you, Samuel offered. I was planning to resupply and head back out, but I can spare a week. We will get your affairs in order, then move you to the ranch before I leave for the cattle drive. Over the next 5 days, Samuel learned more about Zara Volkov than he had learned about anyone in years. She was fierce and proud, refusing to let him do all the work even though exhaustion still shadowed her eyes. Together they sorted through her family's belongings, and he saw her fight back tears over small things: a scarf that had been her mother's, a pipe her father had smoked, her brother's worn boots. They sold what they could to the general store and to neighbors. The money was not much, but Zara insisted on giving half of it to Samuel as advance payment for his kindness. He refused at first, but she was adamant, and eventually he accepted, recognizing that she needed to feel like she was not simply taking charity. On the 3rd day, they went back to the cemetery. Zara had used some of the money to buy proper headstones, simple but carved with her family's names and dates. Samuel helped her install them, and this time when she knelt before the graves, her shoulders were straighter, her voice steadier. I have found place to live, she told them in Russian, then repeated in English for Samuel's benefit. I will be safe. I will honor your memory by living well, by being strong like you teach me. She placed fresh flowers on each grave. I will visit when I can. I will not forget you. As they rode away, Samuel saw her look back once, tears streaming silently down her face. He said nothing, simply kept the horse at a steady pace toward his ranch, giving her privacy for her grief. The Quinn ranch appeared as the sun reached its peak, a sturdy log cabin situated in a valley with a creek running through it. There was a barn, a chicken coop, corrals for horses and cattle, and fields that had been harvested for the year. It was modest but well maintained, and Samuel felt a surge of pride as he watched Zara take it in. It is beautiful, she said, and he could hear the surprise in her voice. You build this yourself? Most of it, Samuel confirmed, helping her down from the horse. My father left me a small inheritance, enough to buy the land. I built the cabin and barn over 2 summers, working between cattle drives. It is not much, but it is home. He showed her through the cabin, which was simple but solidly built. There were 2 bedrooms, a main room with a fireplace and kitchen area, and a small porch that faced the creek. The furniture was rough but functional, made by Samuel's own hands. "This is your room," he said, opening the door to the smaller bedroom. "I cleaned it out before I left last time, so it is empty. There are extra blankets in the chest, and you can arrange it however you like." Zara stepped into the room, running her hand over the wooden bed frame. "It is more than I expect," she said quietly. "Thank you, Samuel." Over the next 2 days, Samuel showed her everything about the ranch: how to feed the chickens and collect eggs, how to milk the cow, how to check on the horses and make sure they had water and grain. He taught her where he kept the rifle and ammunition, how to shoot it if she needed to protect herself or the property. He showed her the garden plot where she could grow vegetables in the spring, the smokehouse where they could preserve meat, the root cellar for storing supplies through the winter. Zara absorbed everything with intense concentration, asking questions and taking mental notes. Samuel found himself impressed by how quickly she learned, how capable she was despite her grief. On the evening of the second day, she cooked dinner for them, a Russian dish called borscht that was hearty and delicious. "My mother's recipe," she explained as they ate. "I have not made it since we come to America. Papa says we must eat American food now, become American. But tonight I want to remember." Samuel ate slowly, savoring the flavors. "It is excellent. Your mother must have been a wonderful cook." "She was," Zara said, a sad smile crossing her face. "She teach me everything: how to cook, how to sew, how to run household. She says Russian woman must be strong, must be able to take care of family." Her smile faded. "I just never think I would need to do it alone." "You are not completely alone now," Samuel said quietly. "I know this is just a business arrangement, but while you are here, you are part of this ranch. That means something." Zara met his eyes across the table, and something passed between them, an understanding that was deeper than words. "Yes," she said softly, "it means something." That night, Samuel lay awake in his bed, listening to the familiar sounds of the ranch and the unfamiliar sound of someone else moving quietly in the other room. Having Zara here felt right in a way he had not expected. The cabin felt less empty, less lonely. He told himself it was simply because he was not used to solitude anymore after months on the cattle drive, but deep down he knew it was more than that. There was something about Zara that called to him. Her strength in the face of devastating loss, her determination to honor her family's memory, the way she held herself with dignity even when she had nothing. She was beautiful too, though he tried not to think about that. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. She needed help and safety, and he needed someone to care for his property. That was all. But as sleep finally claimed him, his last thought was of the way she had looked standing on the porch at sunset, the golden light catching in her dark hair, a small smile on her face as she watched the creek flow by. The next morning, Samuel prepared to leave for the cattle drive. He would be gone for at least 2 months, maybe 3 depending on how the drive went. He had left Zara with money for supplies, instructions on what to do if anything went wrong, and the name of a neighbor 5 miles south who would check on her periodically. "Are you sure you will be all right?" he asked as he saddled his horse. "It is not too late to change your mind. I can take you back to town if you would rather stay there." "No," Zara said firmly. "I stay here. I take care of ranch. You do not worry about me." Samuel swung into the saddle, looking down at her. In the morning light, she looked stronger than she had a week ago, more solid somehow. The haunted look was still in her eyes, but it was not all-consuming anymore. "If you need anything, you go to the Hendersons. Tom Henderson is a good man and his wife Mary is kind. They will help you." "I will be fine," Zara insisted. "You go do your work, I do mine." Samuel nodded, but he found himself reluctant to leave. "I will be back before Christmas," he said. "Probably late November if the weather holds." "I will be here," Zara promised. As Samuel rode away, he looked back once to see her standing in front of the cabin, one hand raised in farewell. Something twisted in his chest, an unfamiliar feeling that he could not quite name. He turned forward and urged his horse into a trot, pushing the feeling away. He had a job to do, and Zara Volkov was just a woman he was helping. Nothing more. But as the weeks passed and he worked the long, hard days of the cattle drive, Samuel found his thoughts drifting back to the ranch more often than they ever had before. He wondered if Zara was managing all right, if the chickens were laying well, if she had enough firewood for the approaching winter. He found himself looking forward to returning home in a way that was different from previous years. One of the other drovers, a grizzled old cowboy named Pete, noticed his distraction. "You got a woman waiting for you at home, Quinn?" he asked one evening as they sat around the campfire. "Just someone looking after my property," Samuel replied. Pete laughed. Sure. "That why you got that moony look every time you stare off into the distance?" Samuel scowled. "I do not have a moony look." "If you say so," Pete said, still grinning. "But I have been doing this work for 30 years, and I know what a man looks like when he has left his heart at home." "You have got it bad, whatever you want to call it." Samuel did not dignify that with a response, but Pete's words stuck with him. Did he have feelings for Zara? He barely knew her. They had spent less than a week together. But he could not deny that she was in his thoughts constantly, that he worried about her, that he found himself counting the days until he could return to the ranch. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Zara was discovering her own complicated feelings. The first week alone had been hard, the silence of the cabin pressing in on her, reminding her of all she had lost. But gradually, the work of maintaining the property, the daily rhythms of feeding animals and tending to chores, became a comfort. She was good at this work, and there was satisfaction in doing it well. She also found peace in the isolation. After her family's death, she had felt exposed in town, aware of pitying looks and whispered conversations. Here, there was no one to judge her grief, no one to tell her she should be moving on or finding a husband to take care of her. She could simply be, working through her sorrow at her own pace, but she also found herself thinking about Samuel more than she expected. His kindness had surprised her. In her experience, men who offered help usually wanted something in return, but Samuel had been nothing but respectful. He had helped her honor her family, given her a place to live and work, and asked for nothing inappropriate. She found herself wondering about him, about his life, about why he lived alone on this beautiful ranch. Mary Henderson came by in the third week, bringing preserves and bread. She was a plump, friendly woman in her 40s who seemed genuinely concerned about Zara's welfare. "Samuel sent word asking us to check on you," Mary explained as Zara invited her in for tea. "He is a good man, that one. Been knowing him since he bought this property 6 years ago. Never known him to bring a woman out here before, though." "It is just business arrangement," Zara said quickly. "He needs someone to look after ranch." Mary said, her eyes twinkling. "Well, business arrangement or not, you let us know if you need anything. Tom can help with heavy work, and I am always happy for company. Gets lonely out here, especially for a young woman on her own." Zara appreciated the offer and found herself looking forward to Mary's weekly visits. The older woman was easy to talk to, full of stories about the area and advice about surviving the Illinois winters. Through Mary, Zara learned more about Samuel, how he had worked himself to exhaustion building the ranch, how he was respected by the other ranchers for his honesty and hard work, how he had turned down several women in town who had made it clear they were interested in becoming Mrs. Quinn. "Why he not marry?" Zara asked during one visit. "He is good man, has good property. Many women would want him." Mary shrugged. I think he has been too focused on building his dream to think about sharing it with someone, or maybe he just had not met the right woman yet. She gave Zara a meaningful look. Until now, perhaps. No, no, Zara protested, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. It is not like that. I work for him, that is all. If you say so, dear, Mary said, but her expression suggested she did not believe it for a moment. As October turned to November, the weather grew colder. Zara spent her days preparing the ranch for winter, chopping firewood, insulating the barn, making sure the animals had adequate shelter. She found a peace in the physical labor, and her body grew stronger, her hands more calloused. The raw grief of her family's death was still there, but it had transformed into something she could carry, a weight that was part of her now rather than something crushing her. She also started making improvements to the cabin. She sewed new curtains from fabric she bought in town, patched holes in the walls to keep out drafts, organized the kitchen more efficiently. She told herself she was just being practical, making the place more comfortable for herself, but part of her knew she was also making it nice for Samuel's return. November arrived with the first real cold snap, and Zara found herself watching the road more often, wondering when Samuel would come home. She told herself it was just because she wanted to report on how well she had maintained the property, but her heart would skip whenever she saw a rider in the distance, disappointment flooding through her when it turned out to be someone else. Finally, on a gray afternoon in late November, she heard the sound of hoofbeats and looked up from feeding the chickens to see a familiar figure riding toward the cabin. Samuel was back, looking tired and trail-worn but whole. Something in Zara's chest loosened, a tension she had not realized she was carrying. She stood frozen as he dismounted, suddenly uncertain. What should she say? How should she greet him? They had an employer-employee relationship, nothing more, but the way her heart was pounding suggested her feelings were more complicated than that. "Zara," Samuel said, pulling off his hat. His eyes swept over her, taking in the way she looked healthier than when he had left, color in her cheeks and strength in her stance. "You look well." "You look tired," she replied, finding her voice. "Come, I make food. You must be hungry from travel." As Samuel cared for his horse and brought his gear into the cabin, he found himself noticing all the small changes Zara had made. The curtains, the way the kitchen was organized, the dried herbs hanging from the rafters, the general sense of warmth and care that pervaded the space. The cabin had never felt this much like a home before. Over dinner, Zara gave him a detailed report on everything that had happened in his absence. The chickens were laying well, the cow was healthy. She had traded eggs with the Hendersons for help with some repairs. She had put the garden to bed for winter and prepared everything for the cold months ahead. Samuel listened, impressed by her thoroughness and capability. "You have done excellent work," he said when she finished. "Better than I could have hoped for." Zara felt warmth spread through her chest at the praise. It is good ranch, easy to care for. They fell into a comfortable routine over the following days. Samuel handled the heavier work and made plans for spring improvements, while Zara managed the daily chores and cooking. They ate meals together, talking about everything and nothing, and Samuel found himself looking forward to these conversations more than anything else. He learned about Zara's childhood in Russia, the small village where she had grown up, the decision to immigrate to America in search of a better life. She talked about her father's dreams and her mother's homesickness, about her brother Dmitri, who had been 3 years younger and had looked up to her with adoring eyes. The pain of their loss was still evident, but she spoke of them with love rather than crushing grief now. Zara learned about Samuel's past as well. His mother had died giving birth to a sister who had also not survived, leaving his father broken. His father had raised him alone, teaching him ranching and riding, but had never recovered from the loss of his wife. When Samuel was 20, his father had been killed in a riding accident and Samuel had been alone ever since. "I understand why you stopped to help me that day," Zara said one evening as they sat by the fire. "You know what it is like to lose everyone." "Yes," Samuel agreed quietly. "I do. But I also stopped because I could not ride past someone in that much pain without trying to help. It is just how I was raised." "Your father, he taught you to be good man," Zara observed. "He tried. I hope I have lived up to it." "You have," Zara said softly, meeting his eyes across the firelight. Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of feelings that went deeper than employer and employee, deeper than friendship. Samuel felt it like a physical pull drawing him toward her. He wanted to close the distance between them, wanted to touch her face and see if her skin was as soft as it looked. But he held back, remembering his promise to respect her independence, to keep their relationship professional. Zara felt the shift too, her heart racing as she looked at Samuel. Over the past months, she had come to care for him in ways she had not expected. She had thought herself incapable of feeling anything beyond grief, but Samuel had shown her that her heart was not as broken as she had believed. He made her laugh, made her feel safe, made her think about a future that was more than just survival. But she was afraid. Afraid of losing someone else she cared about, afraid of being hurt, afraid that she was misreading the situation, and that Samuel saw her only as an employee or a charity case. The tension hung between them for several heartbeats before Samuel stood abruptly. "It is getting late," he said, his voice rough. "We should turn in." Zara nodded, disappointment and relief mixing inside her. "Yes, good night, Samuel." "Good night, Zara." December arrived with snow, transforming the ranch into a winter wonderland. Samuel and Zara worked together to keep the animals comfortable and the cabin warm. The physical proximity of living in close quarters, combined with the forced intimacy of being snowed in together, made it increasingly difficult to maintain the pretense that they were just employer and employee. One evening, while trying to hang a wreath Mary Henderson had given them, Zara lost her balance on the stool she was standing on. Samuel caught her, his arms wrapping around her waist to steady her. For a moment they stood frozen, her body pressed against his face inches from hers. Zara's breath caught, and she saw Samuel's eyes darken with an emotion that made her pulse race. "Thank you," she whispered. "Anytime," Samuel replied, his voice low. His hands lingered on her waist for a moment longer than necessary before he carefully set her back on her feet and stepped away, clearing his throat. "Maybe I should hang that. I am taller." "Yes, good idea," Zara agreed, trying to calm her racing heart. That night, lying in her bed, Zara faced the truth she had been avoiding. She was falling in love with Samuel Quinn. Maybe she had been falling since that first day in the cemetery when he had offered to help a grieving stranger with nothing to gain. She loved his kindness, his integrity, the way he worked himself to exhaustion to build something good. She loved how he listened when she talked about her family, how he made her feel capable and strong, how his presence made the cabin feel like home. But what did he feel? Was he falling for her too? Or was she just a convenient housekeeper who cooked his meals and tended his ranch? The uncertainty kept her awake, turning over every interaction, every look, every almost touch. In his own room, Samuel was having similar thoughts. He was in love with Zara Volkov, and the realization terrified him. He had not intended for this to happen. He had meant to help her and nothing more, but somewhere along the way, she had become essential to him. He loved coming home to find her waiting, loved the way she laughed at his jokes, loved how she had transformed his lonely cabin into a warm home. He loved her strength and her vulnerability, the way she honored her past while building a future. But he had promised her that this was just a business arrangement. He had given his word that he would not expect anything inappropriate from her. If he told her how he felt, would she feel pressured? Would she feel like she had to return his feelings or risk losing her home and livelihood? He could not do that to her. The standoff continued for another week until everything came to a head on Christmas Eve. Zara had been planning for days, saving eggs and butter, trading with Mary Henderson for flour and sugar. She wanted to make Samuel a special dinner, to thank him for everything he had done for her, to show him that she had not just survived the past months, but had begun to heal and hope again. She spent the day cooking, preparing a feast that combined traditional Russian dishes with American fare. As evening fell and she set the table, she changed into her best dress, a deep blue wool that she had not worn since before her family's death. She brushed out her hair and pinned it up carefully, allowing a few tendrils to frame her face. When Samuel came in from the barn and saw her, he stopped dead, his jaw dropping. "Zara," he breathed, "you look beautiful." She felt heat rise in her cheeks but met his eyes. "Thank you. Merry Christmas, Samuel." "Merry Christmas," he replied, still staring. He looked down at his dusty clothes. "I should clean up. I look like I have been working in a barn all day." "You have been," Zara said, smiling. "But yes, clean up. Dinner will be ready soon." 20 minutes later, Samuel emerged in clean clothes, his hair damp from washing, his face shaved. Zara's heart skipped at how handsome he looked. They sat down to dinner, and Samuel was effusive in his praise for the food. They talked and laughed, and the meal stretched on for hours as neither wanted it to end. Finally, as they moved to sit by the fire with coffee, Samuel cleared his throat. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small wrapped package from his pocket. Zara took it with shaking hands and unwrapped it to find a beautiful silver locket. She opened it to discover 2 tiny photographs inside, one of her mother and one of her father, images she recognized from a photograph she kept in her room. "How did you?" she started, her eyes filling with tears. "I had copies made in town," Samuel explained. "I thought you might like to carry them with you, so you always have them close to your heart." Zara could not speak around the lump in her throat. The thoughtfulness of the gift, the care he had taken, the way he had understood what would mean the most to her, it was all too much. Tears spilled down her cheeks and she clutched the locket to her chest. "I am sorry," Samuel said, alarmed. "I did not mean to make you cry. I thought you would like it, but if it is too painful—" "No," Zara managed. "It is perfect. It is most thoughtful gift anyone ever give me." She looked up at him, her vision blurred by tears. "I love it, thank you." Moved by impulse, she leaned forward and kissed his cheek. Samuel froze, and when she pulled back, their faces were inches apart. Zara could see her own feelings reflected in his eyes, longing and fear and hope all mixed together. "Zara," Samuel said hoarsely, "I need to tell you something. These past months, having you here, getting to know you, I have developed feelings for you, strong feelings. I know I promised this would just be a business arrangement, and if you want to keep it that way, I will respect that. But I cannot go another day without telling you that you have become the most important person in my life." Zara's breath caught. "You have feelings for me." "I am in love with you," Samuel said simply. "I love your strength and your kindness and the way you honor those you have lost. I love how you have made this house a home. I love everything about you, but I do not want you to feel pressured. If you do not feel the same way, we can forget I said anything and go back to how things were." "Samuel," Zara said, her voice trembling, "I cannot go back to how things were because I am in love with you too. I try to fight it, tell myself it is too soon, that I should not feel this way." But my heart does not listen. You make me want to live again, not just survive. You make me believe I can be happy again." The smile that broke across Samuel's face was like the sun coming out. "You mean it? You really feel the same way?" "Yes," Zara said, laughing through her tears. "I really do." Samuel cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle and reverent. "May I kiss you, please?" Zara whispered. Their first kiss was soft and sweet, a tender exploration that spoke of new love and infinite possibility. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard, and Samuel rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Me too," Zara confessed. They spent the rest of the evening by the fire, talking and kissing and making plans. Samuel wanted to court her properly, he insisted, to give her time to be sure of her feelings. Zara argued that she was already sure, but she appreciated his respect for propriety. They agreed that Samuel would move forward with building an addition onto the cabin, creating more private space, and that they would announce their courtship to the community after the new year. As winter turned to spring, their love deepened. Samuel courted Zara with the same dedication he brought to everything else in his life. He brought her wildflowers from the meadow, taught her to ride horses better, took her on picnics by the creek. Zara bloomed under his attention, her last shadows of grief lifting as joy and hope took their place. They visited her family's graves together in March, Samuel standing respectfully behind as Zara knelt and told her parents and brother about her happiness. "I think you would approve of him," she said softly. "He is good man like Papa. He treats me with respect like you teach me to demand. I wish you could meet him." Samuel stepped forward and placed his own flowers on the graves. "I promise to take care of her," he said quietly, "to honor her and protect her and love her for the rest of my life. Thank you for raising such a remarkable woman." On a warm day in April, Samuel proposed properly, going down on one knee in front of the cabin as the sun set. "Zara Volkov, you have transformed my life in ways I never imagined. You have made me happier than I knew was possible. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," Zara said, pulling him to his feet and kissing him. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." They were married in May in a simple ceremony in Galesburg, with the Hendersons and a few other neighbors as witnesses. Zara wore a new dress made by Mary Henderson, white with delicate embroidery, and carried wildflowers from the ranch. Samuel wore his best suit, his hair carefully combed, his eyes never leaving his bride's face. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed Zara with a passion that made several people in attendance clear their throats pointedly. He did not care. This woman had come into his life as a grieving stranger tending graves, and now she was his partner, his love, his future. Their wedding night was tender and passionate, both of them nervous and eager. Samuel was gentle with Zara, mindful that this was her first time, and she responded to him with a trust and openness that humbled him. Afterwards, they lay tangled together, and Samuel stroked her hair as she rested her head on his chest. "I never think I could be this happy again," Zara murmured. "After I lose my family, I think that part of my life is over, but you show me that I can have love and family again." "Thank you for that gift." "You gave me the same gift," Samuel replied, kissing the top of her head. "I was lonely for so long without even realizing it. You made me whole." Their first year of marriage was filled with hard work and deep joy. They expanded the ranch, buying more cattle and starting a small vegetable farm that Zara managed. Samuel still took on occasional cattle drive work, but he never stayed away for more than a month at a time, unable to bear being apart from his wife for longer than that. In February of 1880, Zara told Samuel she was pregnant. He was overjoyed and immediately began fussing over her, insisting she rest more and not work too hard. Zara tolerated his hovering with amusement, continuing to manage the household and garden with her usual efficiency, while he built a cradle and prepared a nursery in the addition they had completed the previous fall. Their son was born in October, a healthy baby with his mother's dark hair and his father's gray eyes. They named him David, and Samuel cried when he held his son for the first time, overcome with love and gratitude for this new life he and Zara had created together. Zara proved to be a devoted mother, and Samuel was a hands-on father, often seen walking the floor with David at night or carrying him in a sling while working around the ranch. They took the baby to visit his grandparents' graves, Zara holding David as she told her family about their grandson. "I wish you could meet him," she said softly. "But I tell him about you. He will know where he comes from, know the sacrifices you made so I could have this life." 2 years later, their daughter was born, a tiny girl with Zara's green eyes and a temperament that suggested she would be as strong-willed as her mother. They named her Anna, after Zara's mother, and Samuel was just as smitten with his daughter as he had been with his son. As the years passed, the Quinn ranch prospered. Samuel's hard work and Zara's management skills combined to create a successful operation. They added more land, built a larger house to accommodate their growing family, and became respected members of the community. Samuel served on the town council, and Zara organized a women's group that helped new immigrants adjust to life in America. In 1885, when a Russian family arrived in Galesburg with nowhere to go, Zara and Samuel immediately offered them work and a place to stay in a cabin they had built for hired hands. The family, the Petrovs, were grateful and became dear friends. Zara loved having people to speak Russian with again, and their children became playmates for David and Anna. They had 2 more children, another son named Michael in 1884 and a daughter named Clara in 1887. Their home was always full of noise and laughter, of friends and family, of love and life. The lonely cabin where a grieving woman and a solitary cowboy had once lived had become a warm, welcoming ranch house filled with children's voices and the smell of Zara's cooking and the sound of Samuel's laughter. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Samuel took Zara back to the cemetery where they had first met. The graves were well tended, thanks to their regular visits, and the headstones had weathered well. Samuel stood behind Zara, his arms wrapped around her waist as she spoke to her family. "It has been 12 years since you left me," Zara said. "I still miss you every day, but the pain is different now. It is softer, mixed with gratitude for the time we had and for the life that came after. I have 4 beautiful children now. David is 8, smart like Papa was. Anna is 6, brave like Dmitri. Michael is 4, gentle and kind. Clara is 2, full of fire like Mama. I wish you could know them. I wish they could know you." She paused, tears running down her cheeks. "I tell them about you all the time. About the village in Russia, about the journey to America, about Papa's dreams and Mama's strength and Dmitri's laughter. They know they carry your legacy." Samuel tightened his arms around her. "I think they would be proud of you," he said softly. "Of the life you have built, of the woman you have become. I know I am." Zara turned in his arms and kissed him. "I could not have done it without you. You gave me a reason to live when I want to die. You showed me that love and loss can exist together, that I can honor my past while building a future. You are my everything, Samuel Quinn." "And you are mine," Samuel replied. "The luckiest day of my life was the day I saw you tending these graves. I almost rode by. I was tired and wanted to get to town, but something made me stop, and that decision changed everything." "Fate," Zara said. "It was fate." They stood together in the fading afternoon light, much as they had 12 years before, but everything was different now. Then they had been strangers bound by grief and loneliness. Now they were partners, lovers, parents, bound by a love that had grown from tragedy into something beautiful and strong. As they rode back to the ranch, the sun setting behind them and their children waiting at home, Samuel reflected on the unexpected journey his life had taken. He had thought he would always be alone, that his ranch would always be his only legacy. But Zara had shown him that life could surprise you, that love could find you in the most unlikely places, that helping a stranger could lead to everything you had ever wanted but never dared to hope for. The years continued to pass in a blur of seasons and celebrations. David grew into a strong young man who loved working the ranch with his father. Anna developed her mother's head for business and began managing the ranch's accounts. Michael discovered a talent for working with horses, training them with a patience and skill that reminded Samuel of his own father. Clara, the baby, was fearless and full of questions, keeping everyone on their toes. In 1895, when David announced he was courting a young woman from town, Zara and Samuel exchanged knowing smiles. Their son was 22, the same age Zara had been when she had lost her family. But David's life was full of love and possibility, and watching him build his own future filled them both with pride. The following year, David married his sweetheart Emma in a ceremony at the ranch. As Samuel watched his son take his vows, he caught Zara's eye across the crowd and saw tears streaming down her face. He knew she was thinking of her parents and brother, wishing they could be there to see this day. After the ceremony, he found her standing alone by the creek, looking out at the water. "They are here," Samuel said, coming to stand beside her. "Maybe not in body, but they are here. Look at everything you have built, Zara. Your family lives on through you, through our children, through the love you have given so generously. That is the greatest memorial you could have created for them." Zara leaned against him, finding comfort in his solid presence. "You always know what to say." "I have had years of practice," Samuel teased gently. "And I learned from the best. You taught me what it means to truly honor the people we have lost while still embracing the life we have." As their children grew and started families of their own, the ranch expanded into a true homestead with multiple houses and barns. Samuel and Zara became grandparents, delighting in spoiling their grandchildren and passing on stories of the family's history. Zara made sure every grandchild knew about their great-grandparents who had immigrated from Russia, about the courage it took to start over in a new country, about the importance of family and hard work. Samuel continued to work the ranch into his 60s, though he delegated more of the heavy labor to his sons and sons-in-law. He and Zara would sit on their porch in the evenings, watching the sun set over land they had built together, surrounded by the sounds of their children and grandchildren. "Did you ever imagine this?" Zara asked one evening as they watched their grandchildren play by the creek. "When you stopped to help grieving stranger in cemetery," Samuel pulled her close. "Never in my wildest dreams. I thought I was just helping someone in need. I had no idea I was meeting my soulmate, the woman who would transform my entire life. I was so lost that day," Zara remembered. "So broken. I did not think I could ever feel anything but pain again. And then you appeared, offering help with no expectation of anything in return. You showed me kindness when I needed it most." "You showed me what I had been missing," Samuel replied. "I thought I was content with my solitary life, but I was just existing. You taught me what it means to truly live." In 1905, on a spring morning much like the one when they had first made love, Samuel passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 64. Zara woke to find him beside her, his face peaceful, and though her heart shattered at the loss, she also felt gratitude for the nearly 30 years they had shared. He had lived to see all their children married, had held 17 grandchildren, had built a legacy that would endure for generations. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives Samuel had touched. Cowboys he had worked with, neighbors he had helped, families he had given work to when they needed it most. Zara stood strong through it all, her children supporting her on either side, and when she spoke at the graveside, her voice did not waver. "Samuel Quinn was the best man I ever knew," she said. "He found me in my darkest hour and gave me a reason to hope again. He loved me with a devotion that never wavered, that grew stronger with every year that passed. He was a wonderful husband, a devoted father, a doting grandfather. He built this ranch with his own hands, but more importantly, he built a family with his heart. I will miss him every day for the rest of my life, but I am grateful beyond measure for the time we had." She lived another 12 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, passing on her recipes and stories and the strength that had carried her through tragedy to triumph. When she died in 1917 at the age of 63, she was buried next to Samuel, their graves side by side just as they had lived their lives. On her headstone, beneath her name and dates, her children had engraved a simple inscription. She honored those she lost by building a life filled with love. The Quinn Ranch continued to thrive through the generations, passed down from parent to child, each generation adding their own chapter to the family story. But the tale that was told most often, the story that became family legend, was of how it all began. Of a grieving woman tending graves alone and a cowboy who stopped to help. Of kindness that became friendship, friendship that became love, and love that became a legacy. In the ranch house that now stood where Samuel's cabin once had, great-great-grandchildren would gather to hear the story of their ancestors. They would learn about the family that had come from Russia, about the fever that took them, about the cowboy who found their great-great-grandmother in a cemetery and offered to help her honor the dead before helping her build a new life. And they would learn that love could be found in the most unexpected places, that tragedy did not have to be the end of the story, and that sometimes the greatest memorial to those we have lost is the beautiful life we build in their honor. The graves in the Galesburg Cemetery were never forgotten. Every generation of Quinns made sure they were tended, flowers placed regularly, names remembered. And if you visited on certain spring mornings when the light was just right, you might see the ghosts of a young woman and a cowboy standing together, her hand in his, looking out at the legacy they had created from grief and hope and love that refused to die.